We're here today with marketing professor George Day to talk about his new paper, Closing the Marketing Capabilities Gap, in which he discusses the deluge of data that companies are faced with as they try to meet the challenges of marketing over the next decade. Joining us in this discussion is marketing professor David Reibstein. Dave and George, thanks for joining us. George, your paper is called Closing the Marketing Capabilities Gap. What exactly is that gap, and why is it so important that companies address it?
You know, as I reflected on the title, I'm beginning to think a better title would be Narrowing the Marketing Capabilities Gap. The gap is a consequence of two things. What you might call a data deluge, the information explosion, where we have a doubling of the amount of data, not information necessarily, or wisdom, but the amount of data stored every 18 months. And so this is an exponential increase in the data available to companies. At the same time, is our best guess on the ability of companies to actually use this data, convert it into information, then act on it, is growing at about 2% a year. So that's the gap that I'm looking at here. So we're overwhelmed, we're confused with the consequences of a term I love, which is the splinter net. And the fragmenting media, the tremendous decomposition of mass markets into little niches, and of course, media choices proliferating rapidly. It's all quite overwhelming to companies. And by the way, individuals. We're all, I think, struggling with this tremendous overload.
Dave, what are the traps that companies fall into trying to manage all this data?
Well, one of the things that I think is really interesting is thinking about the history of how this gap happened. Because what George was just referring to, which is absolutely right, is this huge proliferation of choices that customers have, options that companies have, and then the abundance of data. But let's back up just a little bit and think about who was in marketing and who's been sort of doing this in the past. And much of it has been people that have risen up through sales and have the sales orientation. They were very good interpersonally, very good at sort of working and talking to customers. Or they were people that sort of could identify and feel what the customer felt. But what's happened is we don't need to rely on sort of the pearls of the tongue or the empathy that the marketer needs. It really is, we have information. And so the new marketer today is very different than the marketer of the past. And I think, one of the traps is sort of falling into doing things the old way and trying to unlearn the way that we used to be doing marketing. And today it is so much more just data-driven.
So there's so many new developments in knowledge sharing technology, like micro-targeting and communities of users and all the social networking tools. What are the best examples of these technologies, and who is using them in the most advantageous ways? George, you might want to answer that.
Well, let me set the frame for a broader way of thinking about how companies cope, and then see how they're able to take these technologies. I think two ideas. One is that technology is creating the problem. It's also going to be the solution to the problem. So social networking, knowledge sharing, mini Googles that companies are creating for their own databases are obviously the path to the solution. But it'll only work if the organization is inclined to use them and prepared to use them. So I am looking at three different capabilities that companies will need in order to effectively use all this new technology for sorting through, sharing, and interpreting data. First one is what I call vigilant market learning. That is the ability to see things sooner, to capture the right information as opposed to treating all information as equally important, sorting out which signals you really should pay attention to. That's a significant capability. It requires very curious leadership, highly networked, and so forth. Second is the notion of adaptive market experimentation. This is a capability companies have to master, and whether it's B2B, B2C, it's companies like Quicken doing 600 experiments every year with their customers and learning systematically from it. So we have a lot of interesting tools on predictive analytics and so forth that our colleagues Pete Fader and Eric Bradlow are working on here to try to unlock that, the lessons from those experiments. But the other thing that I think is important about companies that use these tools well is that they don't try to do it all themselves. And what I've been fascinated with is what I'm now calling open marketing, which is a direct lift from open innovation. And this is the notion that if you want to do search engine optimization or predictive analytics, it's probably not a good idea to try to build that capability in-house. Rather, you find a really good partner who is able to help you with this, to apply this, and by the way, has the right kind of talent. Because the reason I think that you have to partner in part is that the talent is very hard to find. So in an era of high unemployment, there's a desperate need for qualified, creative, analytical people. Kind of the two ideas coming together. But we have a talent crisis, and companies are struggling to find people to do that. The answer, I think, is to find the right partners
but where
to
do you
use this.
Who are these partners? Are they other companies? Are they individuals that you hire?
They will array from, and the IBM study that you talked about asked about potential partner areas. So there's 12 kinds of partners at least, anywhere from specialists, 1, 2, 3, 4 person specialists in predictive analytics, all the way to one of the big 3 integrated advertising agencies, which has got a host of creative shops, marketing research firms, and with the specialized talent built into them that they can spread across and build experience in lots of different situations.
Yeah. So you asked Robbie specifically who's doing a good job of trying to use the new tools and trying to take advantage of it, and George mentioned Quicken. Let me add to that. I would say Amazon falls in that category of they're constantly experimenting, and the web page that you get and the web page that I get are might be very, very different, not just based on our history, but because we're coming in and they're going to try something different. And it's a whole test and learn mentality. I'm going to test something out, see what works, deploy it. And that could happen all within the same day. And in fact, you could be doing hundreds of these every day where I'm going to test. So you buy a blue sweater, I buy a blue sweater, you come back and they're going to give you a yellow sweater and see if you're going to do it. And that's what it is that sort of is being featured. And for me, they're going to give me, what would go well with the blue sweater, black slacks. And they're going to see, so which works better? Quickly do that with a couple thousand people, learn from that, deploy.
In fact, in your paper, George, you quote Jeff Bezos.
Yes.
As saying, rather than ask what we're good at and what else can we do with that skill, you ask who are our customers, what do they need? And then you say we're going to give that to them regardless of whether we have the skills to do so, and we will learn those skills. But Amazon has the luxury of being able to do these millions of tests to find out what consumers need, even before consumers know what they need. So other companies don't have that capability.
There's an interesting property that Amazon has and other companies have that are taking advantage of this ability, which is dealing with customers individually. Mm-hmm. So there's lots of companies that sell through distributors who sell to other distributors and are not really in touch with the end customer. Amazon is in touch with exactly who their ultimate customer is. And there's lots of businesses, certainly online businesses, have that ability. But actually, if you think about it, cellular companies have that ability. Because they know exactly who that individual customer is. Banks have that. So companies that have the individual level data, which takes us back to the earlier problem. The problem is this abundance of data.
Right.
And the question is who's able to really take advantage of it.
Yep.
Now let me go to the other extreme, which is take a company like Unilever. Unilever sells through distributors or for the big retailers sells directly to retailers. So either distributors to retailers or directly to retailers who end up selling then to consumers. And they don't have that individual consumer level data. But what they have started doing, and doing it I think very effectively, is working on a lot of social media. So the whole Dove campaign that got tons of publicity and everything was all something that was primarily created online. And they created ads that were never shown on broadcast television. And it was really for this spread through YouTube and through other social media that really allowed them to reach a massive audience. And it has been very clever for a company that doesn't have that individual level data.
Well, let me ask George, there's a follow-up question to that. So consumers are obviously increasingly vocal, chatty. They get online and they're constantly spreading their opinions about products and services. How can companies figure out which comments are important and need immediate action and which are just noise?
There's a lot of interesting technology to, first of all, capture these blog comments and then edit them and see if there's patterns. So if you go onto Google, you can see patterns of recurring use of a term. And what you're looking for is literally clearing out all of the noise and concentrating on what's the signal that we really want to look at. And it might be a complaint about product performance. I remember one of the very earliest ones was an experience Procter & Gamble had is they brought out, remember Febreze?
Yes.
So everybody knows Febreze almost failed because early in its launch, a woman got on, blogged, and said, Febreze killed both of my canaries. And this spread through the internet. Procter had a very good way of capturing that. They figured out who she was because they sent an email, said, what can we do? They rushed a team out, talked to her, and after a while discovered, and she agreed, the canaries died of old age.
Coincidentally, right?
So, but that meant that they were able to stop that really threatening message going out over the toxic effects of Febreze, and they actually turned it into an opportunity on the internet. And it's that ability to capture these signals, understand them, and act on them quickly. But we've had lots of examples of blog messages that have been ignored for way too long and just go viral. And it doesn't take very long.
Yeah. Which takes me back to your question. I want to build on what George said related to your question. You said, how do you determine which ones to respond to? And I think part of the message ends up becoming every customer becomes important, in part because today every customer has a microphone. Or megaphone, I guess I should say, because it is easier to broadcast your message. And you could have said, there's not a massive number of people that are claiming their canaries are dying from Febreze, let's ignore it. Yeah. But it, as George points out, it goes viral. Right. And suddenly it starts becoming this big publicity. Audience. And if we ignore it, then it could be very, very dangerous. So every customer starts becoming important, and you need to be addressing all of them. And that requires a whole different skill set as well.
Right.
Yeah. So this is back to the issue, well, how do you build the skill set, the technology? So most companies would be ill-advised to try to do it themselves. It's extremely sophisticated kind of analysis, so that's where partners come in.
All right.
And finding the right partners, building a relationship with them, those are difficult management challenges, and the good companies will do it. So broadly, this leads us into the question of how do you then think about this marketing capabilities gap? The answer is most companies are not going to be able to close it. All their aspiration should be is to close it faster than their competitors. Get ahead, line up the right partners, build a capability to do these kind of test and learn experiments, and stay ahead of the competition. Okay. By the way, just a sidebar to this, one of the things that I'm fascinated in is that there are only so many good partners out there. So I think what we're going to see in this open marketing arena, that the smart companies are going to get there first. They're going to lock up the good partners, and the later entrants who say, oh, this is a good idea, won't have the pick of the partners.
Should we worry about consumers' short attention spans? I mean, they're trying to absorb these thousands of messages thrown at them. At some point, consumers just tune you out. So how do companies avoid that? How do they avoid being ignored by customers, by potential consumers?
So that is always a threat. It's been a threat for a long time, but if nothing else, because we have so many different channels to try and reach customers, it's become more of a threat. The responsiveness to banner ads is down.
Yeah.
Just because the number of them have gone up, and so I think part of the answer goes back to really customizing messages in your communications to the individual customer, so that what it is that you're saying resonates with them. Historically, we're going to post it out there for a large number of people. Our message comes from the history again of mass media. We're going to put out a mass message versus talking specifically to Robbie or talking specifically to an individual about what it is that they might need.
Okay.
But at the extreme, not only the message is tailored, but the whole product offering.
Absolutely.
So you get exactly what you want. Now customers will pay attention because they understand that you're solving precisely their problem. Let's ask why Zappos does so well in a otherwise crowded category, because they are very good at customer service and they give the customer exactly what they want. Customers can solve their problems very easily on Zappos.
Right. Weren't they one of the first to offer free shipping back and forth?
Yes.
Big point for people who love shoes.
So you can order 3 pairs of shoes to get the one that you really want to keep.
And not pay any penalty.
Yeah.
George, you sent me a study from IBM called From Stretched to Strengthened, in which IBM actually talked to more than 1,700 chief marketing officers around the globe. And at one point, you can tell me what you felt was most interesting about that study, but at one point the study advises CMOs to understand individuals as well as markets, to establish customer intimacy, to focus on relationships, not just transactions. How do you do that in such a huge global online marketplace?
Well, that's where technology becomes our friend. And so we can build deep insights into customers if they choose to let us. I mean, they may not. They may want a transactional relationship. But by and large, let's just take Zappos because it's a very familiar example. Zappos knows a lot about its customers and it reaches out to them. Let's take another company which I think has done a masterful job of addressing that, and that's Tesco with their Club Card in the UK. They have 14 million customers who have given Tesco permission to capture all the data about every transaction, all their demographics, background information. And so Tesco knows an enormous amount about these people. It can then tailor messages, offers, precisely to their geographic area and to them individually. So a newly wed couple gets a certain set of offerings. A family with a new baby, it gets offers.
But at some point, don't you think customers are going to stop giving that permission? I mean, there's just...
Actually, so there's this concern about, too much intrusion.
Personal,
I want to guard my privacy. And I think we're going to go through some waves of people saying, no, I want to be private. And other people saying, wait a minute, I'm being better served by companies knowing some information about me. My belief is that the only people who should receive, coupons for baby diapers are people with babies, right?
Yeah.
And you could go through the whole list of, the only people who are going to get specific offers are ones that are in need of it. We see the phenomena of Groupon going on right now. And the number of sort of promotions that I get for Brazilian blowouts is just amazing,
Right.
and for tooth whitening and for things that I'm not particularly interested in right now. And that's just wasted messaging that's going on. And I wish they knew more about me so that I wouldn't get all the noise.
So would you give them more about you so they would know more about you?
So I think, as I said, we're going to see these waves of people discovering, I want to be private, but on the other hand, I am much better served. I get much less of this noise if people know more about me. And so I think there's going to be a bifurcation of those who say, bring it on,
away.
and others that say, I want to protect. And those that are asking for, protection of their information are going to be observing the others. And I think we will see an evolution towards more disclosure, not less disclosure.
So just to maybe put a wrapper around this, what's a relationship? It's a perception of mutual understanding and mutual benefits. So the customer will only give the company permission if they think it's in their best interests.
So they have control over this.
They have control. And so why does Tesco get permission to collect all this information and to use it to target, as Dave was suggesting, very specific messages? And the answer is a rebate. Mm-hmm. So what's neat about Tesco is that every quarter they get a rebate based upon a percentage of all of the value of the purchases they've made in that quarter. So that's a reminder. This is a very good two-way relationship.
Yeah. Okay. I have two more questions. Dave, the IBM study also quotes CMOs as saying that return on marketing investment is the primary measure of effectiveness. This is nothing new. It's something you've talked about a lot. But how do you prove that value? How do you come up with some numbers? Are numbers not the answer?
So people are sort of stuck on this return on marketing investment, and they do that in part because it sort of integrates with the rest of the financial communications of the company, because you've got an ROI that is measured in all sorts of investments. And so it's a basis for comparison across. But I think what it is that we need to do, and what our current accounting systems are not very good at doing right now, is sort of capturing the long-term contributions of marketing. So we have things like a brand, which only shows up on our books if we acquire a brand. Mm-hmm. If we build it, it doesn't show up officially on our books. But that doesn't mean that we can't measure it, and we can't measure what the value of that particular brand is. And again, there are partners, and there are various companies that assist in helping with that particular measurement of it. But maybe even better than brand is looking at the long-term value of a customer. And that's not saying just what is it that they bought right now and how much did I make in that transaction, but I want to think about that relationship. And that relationship that I have with that customer, that's today, and hopefully out into the future. So when someone buys a BMW, what's the value of that customer that bought the BMW? Is not what I just sell them right now and the service that they're going to have, but it's also what's the probability that they're going to buy a BMW out into the future. So I think what it is that companies are going to move more towards is looking at that longer term. And I raise this in the context, I haven't forgotten your question, the return on marketing investment, which is sort of looking backwards. How much did I make from that? And it's not looking enough forward towards what's that future revenue stream that's going to come by having gotten this customer, solidified my relationship, increase the probability that they're going to be buying out into the future.
Okay. George, maybe I'll throw this out at you. The IBM report at one point uses a very strong image for me. It says, quote, just as X-rays transform medicine by letting doctors see through human tissue, so the new information and communication technologies are revolutionizing business by letting customers and citizens peer through corporate walls. So what is the one single best thing a company can do to turn consumers' ability to see through corporate walls into a competitive advantage?
To essentially create transparency. So I will focus on largely the building of relationships based upon mutual benefits, mutual understanding. So the company has to really invest to understand those customers and then create offers that are exactly tailored to their requirements so that they felt they're being listened to and that their requirements are being met. So this is this notion of mutual commitment based upon mutual rewards. Now, I don't mind you getting a benefit from this, but it's got to be worth my while.
Thank you both for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks, Robbie.